Hi everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and Steelhunter returned with the new update this week, update 117, and with it, it has brought 3 new vehicles. In today's video, I'm going to give you a rundown and gameplay of the 3 different vehicles so you can know whether they're actually any good and maybe some kind of upgrade path for them. And then I'm going to give you my overall opinion of Steelhunter in 2022, whether it's actually worth participating in. So firstly, what is Steelhunter? It's 20 versus 20 players all playing against each other to try and see who will win in kind of a battle royale event. I'm not going to have time to be able to explain all of Steelhunter today. I'm going to be focusing more on the vehicles and hoping that you know a little bit about him. So this is the Huragan. This is a Polish medium tank, and I believe Huragan means hurricane. And I guess this thing is called the Hurricane because of its 5-key ability. More on that in a second. So the Huragan doesn't really do too well very early on in the battle, but it comes into this wonderful, amazing sweet spot in the mid in the later game, as I'm going to be talking about. And that is because the upgrade path with all the medium tanks, you don't get the mobility until the 3rd upgrade, unlike the heavy, so you probably want to avoid duels early. But the Huragan actually has a little autoloader. Now, this is a very interesting moment. Their Huragan has gone into the cap circle. Remember, it takes 4 seconds, so I'm going to fire one, wait 3 seconds, fire again, 1, 2, 3, ram him to keep the damage going, and that was just a clinical takedown of the enemy Huragan at the beginning of this battle. That's something that's very detailed, but it's definitely one of the things that I'm most proud of in the entire replay that you're going to see today. And look at the snowball. That is where this... So what you're going to see right now is you get a lucky early start. Well, not a lucky early start, but a situation where we hard outplayed, obviously, a less experienced player. And then now, immediately, we've already got our way up to level 4. So my upgrade path for the Huragan is to firstly take radio detection cooldown, and I always choose the one with the lower cooldown because I want to use it more often. Next, I'm going to take the top speed, although that might be a little bit of a misplay because do you see how much of an engine power you actually get from the slightly lower top speed but the higher power engine, which can really help with making your way up slopes. I lost a game against a new Swedish heavy tank because I didn't have the upgrade path. But here we go. Here's the new Huragan ability at level 5. I think you can see why it's like a hurricane, right? Lightning pulses down from above. I don't think it actually damages your own tank, but it damages the enemy vehicle. And it's called, what is it actually called? It is called Electric Discharge. And it's incredibly powerful at preventing somebody from taking maybe one of the consumables that you can pick up, or the airdrop specifically. And the electric discharge ability is kind of the same color as an airdrop, which is really weird because when someone's in there, they're kind of thinking like, what are they doing? Are they managed to get me? And I'm sure as more people become more experienced, they're probably going to figure it out. But look at this. This Varyag is going straight towards the airdrop. He thinks he can be able to pick it up. And we get our electric discharge off. And look at the damage, how it ticks up. It's pretty much 70 every half a second, I believe. That is some incredible damage per minute. And we can just continue to snowball here, get the airdrop, and we're going to be like a hurricane of the battlefield. However, one thing I'm not going to be like a hurricane of the battlefield is with my marksmanship over this. Oh my god. Maybe I got a little bit too lazy. I'm going to miss. What? Now I'm going to bounce a heat round off the Harlequin. I'm auto-aiming at him now, and I guess I hit the tracks again. Now I'm playing on the NA server today because I wanted to be able to play the new update a day early that the American server gets. And one thing I just realized is that you cannot auto-aim when your ping is substantially higher. And you'll see at the top of the screen that I usually get about like 100 or 120 ping when I'm playing on the NA server. And so it makes auto-aim really, really poor with the extra ping, because obviously the auto-aim isn't going to be giving lead for you. I actually managed to, I think, do a little bit of a cheeky upgrade there, or not quite. I didn't manage to just before I got the extra shot in. And just like that, now our Huragan is going to be at maximum performance. And I'm going to decide to take the magazine reload on this tank. So the final few field mods, well not the field mods, sorry, the upgrade path that I decided to be able to take was mobility, and then I got rotation speed, and now I'm going for this magazine. 8 rounds, 1.5 seconds intra-clip reload, 290 alpha, 370 alpha, penetration. with your standard rounds or with your premium rounds, and 240 alpha. But what's really crazy about the Huragan is that it gets a 6-key ability called Surging Fervor. And what this does is it increases the damage done to enemy vehicles with each subsequent hit. And you can see I was thinking about dumping in my electrical discharge there on the airdrop because I was thinking the Harlequin was going to go for it. And here we go, we've activated it, and look how the damage is going to step up. 256, 270, 309, 362, 400, and we miss, unfortunately, the extra shot, so you can see that the bonus stopped stacking up. But that means that with that ability, and we managed to bounce 2 shells off the Harlequin there while we're having to reload our entire magazine. But you can see with that Surging Fervor that the damage goes from 200 all the way up to 400 with those kind of combo shots. And so that is an incredibly powerful ability. I'd say it's probably the most powerful ability in all of the new Steelhunter game mode, and it's absolutely outrageous because you can just stack up such an amount of burst. And you can even do it with either the AP rounds or you can do it with the heat rounds. I think it's probably the highest damage that you can do as quickly as possible. Obviously, you can land like an airstrike with the Harlequin. You could do something like that. But I think that the Huragan is now the new burst damage monster of the frontline game mode. I guess you could probably penetrate the high explosive rounds with the autoloader on the American light tank, but I probably wouldn't recommend going for that. I still feel like this is going to be your best bet for just absolutely outrageous damage. And yeah, you can see that in a second, spoilers coming up, we're going to have to fight a heavy tank, and the amount of damage that we're going to be able to get out is just outrageous with this vehicle. So far, it's just been kills after kills after kills, 1v1s after 1v1s after 1v1s. That's the way that I like to play Steelhunter. I like to let it all hang out on the battlefield, you know, just let the chips fall where they may. I'm not really the kind of player to chill on the outline of the battle and just hope that my opponents make mistakes. I want to get stuck in, and let's see how this is going to work out. So I started off with 2 shots at the Beowulf. That's the new Swedish heavy tank that I'm going to be playing, and we can see that Beowulf with 2,400 hit points is definitely in a good position. We could now he's repaired. He's going into the repair depot, and check this out. Surging Fervor activated, dropping the electrical discharge, and we're already up to just an absolute ridiculous amount of damage here. We're doing 320 with every single shot on the Beowulf, and the final one finishes them off. And we did 2,400 damage in what felt like about 8 seconds there. Crazy stuff. And I even wonder whether... I'm actually going to rewind because I might have just seen something that was absolutely crazy. I need to rewind that. Does the Surging Discharge actually trigger... does the electrical discharge actually trigger the Surging Fervor? That will be very interesting if that's the case. Let's watch on the screen here as I activate it. Okay, it's up to 1. I drop the discharge. Wow! Okay, I'm not sure if that's a bug or if that's intended. But do you see how the stacks of the Surging Fervor actually went up based on my electrical discharge? So that suggests that if you were to land an electrical discharge at the start of the Fervor, that you could probably be able to get the bonus damage that the Fervor is doing up to maximum immediately, and then even dump out the entire magazine. Now, it might just be a graphical glitch, or it could be actually increasing the damage. If you want to, rewind the video and take a look to see how the damage is stacking up. I'm not sure if that's intended, because the Fervor does strongly suggest it's like each penetrating hit, but I guess that they're kind of including the electrical discharge as a penetrating hit. Bit bizarre. This thing is an absolute monster of the battlefield towards the latter part, and I think for a 1v1, it's probably the strongest tank. Wargaming, I believe, have nerfed the British medium tank inside this game mode. And look, this is a maxed out Raven versus a maxed out Huragan. And we can see that the player used all of their abilities. They even had the trap, but they couldn't really do much because we locked down their tracks and we used that Fervor, and then we even got the electrical discharge in as well. Eventually, the player decided that they had to repair their tracks, but it was going to be too little too late. Now, I took a lot of damage fighting the Raven. And so I want to get away from the Harlequin here, and I want to try and get a bit of a heal up. And I'm going to apply some pressure to them by going into this heal drop. And we actually managed to get it off. And now I'm just going to try and finish off my magazine there and try to be able to escape from the enemy Harlequin, because I've got to try and reload. And beautifully, my electrical discharge is now off cooldown as well, that I'm going to be able to enjoy. And just look how the Surging Fervor actually manages to last for quite a while. Shame I didn't manage to get like an extra magazine there. So we're just going to use our electrical discharge to force them out of a position where I thought they'd be camping. And then now they're going to be able to come forwards. And all we have to do probably is put these last 3 rounds in, and we should be able to have this. No, it looks like we're actually going to have to reload again. Shows you how durable the Harlequin is if you go for that hit points upgrade path. They've got more hit points than me, and I'm a medium tank for goodness sake. But they don't have the firepower that I have, that's for sure. They focused on their hit points, I focused on my mobility, so I'm usually going to end up being a little bit quicker than the Harlequin is. And they decide to get in themselves into a silly location, I guess thinking about running away from me, and there you go. And we're going to have a little bit of a celebration at the end by having a bit of a style and with the electrical discharge as well. So all in all, the Huragan, I think it's a vehicle that's weak early, but if you can manage to get an early kill with it, you can snowball games like no other. I look at this thing as like a harbinger that was using the berserk ability, but without having to also damage itself at the same time. A monster. One of the most competitive, possibly if you're a very good player, but I probably wouldn't recommend using this if you're not someone who can use your abilities and interweave them flawlessly. And every time that you miss a penetrating shot with that Surging Fervor, it kind of limits the bonus. This thing doesn't have the durability sometimes to be able to get through the situation. Now I'm going to be playing in a new Chinese light tank, which seems to be modeled after the Type 64. It is called the Bailang. Now, this vehicle is a bit of a weirdo of the battlefield, and that's because it kind of plays a little like a Chaffee or a Type 64 in the random queue. It's fast, it's nimble, it's got a little bit of damage. It's not meant to be like a toothless scout, because what would be the point of playing a scout inside a Steelhunter game mode where it's 1 versus 1 versus 1 versus 1? The vehicle's mobility is decent right from the get-go, so it is going to be able to avoid all of the heavies and all of the medium tanks until they start to get their upgrade path. But be careful, because again, you're going to have to get to level 3 before you get the mobility. So we've immediately spotted a Varyag and another vehicle over towards the right. And this is very interesting that the bushes here are actually keeping us hidden. The camo actually working as you would expect inside a random queue inside Steelhunter. But that Varyag is hitting us very well indeed. Luckily we managed to get we managed to pick up one of the green upgrades, so we're going to be able to get some of the points in as well, and we're going to collect some more supplies as a Varyag manages to come around after us as well. Now let me talk about the Bailang's abilities. You can see we've already picked up an acid shell, and what an acid shell does is it causes damage over time after the shell has managed to penetrate. So you want to hit that shell and then hopefully be able to avoid the tank for a little while, or force them to have to attack you, or just use it to be able to get some great damage. And this is one of, if not the fastest vehicles you're going to play here, because it's got a 75 kilometer an hour top speed limit, enough power to weight ratio to be able to get around. So we're going to use that acid shell now, and look how that Varyag's health is ticking down, while I also focus on the other one. So our acid shot actually managed to do 200 damage to the Varyag, and as an ultimate opportunist there, we managed to go in and third party a double kill out there to be able to claim both of their wrecks at the same time. That's given us now the upgraded gun, which should help us in our quest to be #1 on the battlefield. But also keep in mind that even at level 4, the Bailang only has 1,000 hit points, making it incredibly vulnerable. And so it's, yeah, you're kind of living on the edge the whole time when you play this vehicle, so it's definitely not one for somebody who doesn't like their light tanks and mobile gameplay. And even though this Varyag doesn't look like they've upgraded that much, they're still kind of a threat. But look at this. Look at the acid shell going in there. 220, 240, 300, 300. An extra 420 damage from that acid shell there. Outrageous stuff. And so that means the Varyag has to attack us now. And I can drop my health after they fired at us, because I was a bit worried that maybe I would get caught out. And just like that, we have managed to use our abilities and our brains to win the engagement rather than our brawn, like maybe DPM or alternatively having a good amount of hit points. Alright, so finally we got ourselves a new hull, and our hit points upgrade from 1,000 to 1,400. So this is where now the Bailang starts to become durable, as well as also just having the damage, and also having the mobility early on in the battle. We're going to collect a few upgrades now to try and continue our upgrade path. But also, yeah, you can see that we've finally got our 6-key upgrade, or not upgrade, but our ability. And it actually is a battlefield robot. It's autonomous, it just does its own thing on the battlefield, and it will try and focus, I guess, the nearest enemy, or which hopefully you're going to drop it towards, right? It will even chase them around corners, so slow vehicles beware. But it does have quite low hit points, and so most vehicles are going to be able to take it out in 1 or 2 shots. But it's still rather annoying to have to focus it, especially if, for example, an autoloader has dumped out all of their rounds on the Bailang, or if they focus someone else, and it can be a tremendous advantage for the tank. So we can see our hit points just keep going up and up and up towards the latter part. We've gone from 1,000 to 1,400, and then I've decided to take the hit points for my 6th upgrade, which now means that we've got 1,800. So I've actually got more hit points than the Huragan. So I'm going to use the acid shell now to penetrate the enemy vehicle, and you can see that he's unable to be able to collect that drop. Now we're going to drop in our little bot, and you know what, I'm going to zoom out and just follow it around because this is kind of funny. So it's actually going to be doing 84 damage consistently. It's done 246 in total as it chases the Huragan, and I was thinking about just memeing and not killing the guy and letting the little robot be able to take him down, but yeah, it's kind of bizarre to be able to summon him. As someone who fought a few of the Bailangs and ignored the robot thinking it's not going to be significant, do not ignore the robot. It actually does a substantial amount of damage, and it can be incredibly annoying at stopping you from being able to collect the drops. And you can see the robot lasts for quite a while. It's got 500 hit points. It's even following me around at this point. And the panic that the little robot caused as it makes... Oh, did you hear that? That adorable noise it makes as it blows up. It's kind of a little bit sad. I have to admit, I think the Bailang is actually my favorite vehicle to play, almost purely because of the little Wally that kind of follows you around there. And it's not even a joke. The kind of pressure that you can exert on your opponents in like a 1 versus 1 fight. I love this thing. The Bailang is definitely one out there for you, for all of you players who don't want to just overpower your opponents with brawn or with hit points, and you want to play something a little bit more deadly and smarter. I think this one's going to be a very competitive vehicle in the hands of the capable players. Now sure, you're not going to be able to burst out like a Huragan, but hopefully you're going to have the mobility to be able to avoid them, and you'll be able to pressure them with the acid shell, where you fire one in and then be able to get round the corner. And it kind of turns the Bailang into being this alpha damage monster, as long as it can manage to penetrate the shell. If you miss, or disaster, you're just going to have to run away, I guess, for the next 30-40 seconds until the acid shell comes off cooldown. Alright, so we've managed to destroy 3 vehicles, 4,000 damage, not the most, but again, this isn't really that tank that just chunks damage, chunks damage, chunks damage, then maybe the enemies repair, and then you go after them again. It's kind of this voracious pressure vehicle that stops the enemies from being able to heal at all with its acid round, and importantly with their repair bot. So there's a Raven with 1,800 hit points, kind of don't want to mess around with them, but I have finally reached the maximum capabilities of this vehicle, and for the memes on the stream I decided to go for the HE shell damage, and yeah, you kind of turn into this derpy light tank now with huge alpha. Pretty wild stuff. However, I will say that I'm not sure it's the most competitive way to play the Bailang, and you're probably best to go for either the magazine reload, or alternatively you're best to try and go for the loading speed on this vehicle instead, to be able to rack up that amazing punishment. But if you are able to penetrate the high explosive rounds on this vehicle, it's outrageous. And again, the sad Wally noise there as our battlefield robot was shut down. Such a shame. And I failed my boost up the slope there, which meant that I kind of didn't use that repair bot very intelligently. But whew, 537 damage per hit on a vehicle like this. It's wonderful for these kind of situations. This Raven, I guess, decides that he's got no more chance to run away. Now, I guess I should have rammed the Raven there, and the Raven's actually doing something fairly intelligent here by luring us into a trap. I end up using my heal. They use their heal as well, but I'm hoping that as long as I don't fluff this shot with my acid shell, that it should be able to shut them down. And 646 damage there, which is a nice roll, but the acid would have been able to burn them afterwards. Allows us to 1v1 the American medium. Alright, so now it looks like it's just me and this Harlequin left in this battle. And this is where this tank is just wonderful, it really is. You got a little bit of turret armor, but it's more about just having that alpha damage against an autoloader, and what? Ladies and gents, boys and girls, this is the competitive mode of World of Tanks, right? It's just a shame that World of Tanks itself still has quite a lot of bugs. You want to see this one? This is pretty disgusting. Watch this shell. Watch this shell. We'll put it in slow motion here. And if you've ever wanted to see possibly one of the most disgusting ghost shells in World of Tanks history, well, this is it. I guess I'm just happy that something like this happens in Steelhunter and we don't have to really worry about it in the random queue. But just take a look at this. We'll follow the shell. We'll follow the tracer as well. And this one, I mean, I know that, you know, Obi-Wan Kenobi just came out and lightsabers are all a thing, but I didn't realize that we were going to have lightsabers in World of Tanks that literally just go right through the middle of the enemy vehicle and do nothing. Thanks, Wargaming. I really appreciate that one. It's quite funny that Wargaming kind of are planning to run competitions in the Steelhunter game mode. Think World of Tanks is the most competitive game from that kind of standpoint? Yeah, dubious. Dubious at best. Alright, so now we're just going to derp the Harlequin. And I wonder if I should try and fire HE here. We're going to summon our repair robot, not repair robot, our damaging robot. Put in one more shell with the acid, I believe, into the Harlequin. And unfortunately, Wally's kind of left, not really doing too much at the end of the battlefield. And no! Why would you do this? You destroy my beautiful battlefield robot at the end of the game just because I managed to win. Wargaming, you absolute monsters. So all in all, what do I think about the Bailang? It's a fun one. I really enjoyed this vehicle. I don't think it's going to be the most competitive one to play for all players, a bit like the Huragan. I think they're going to do better with some of the heavy vehicles. But if you love your light tanks and you know about clean engagements and you don't want it to just be all about burst, but you want to be able to force your opponents into having to fight you with the acid shell and you want to make it count, yeah, this thing is a little terror on the battlefield. And that battlefield robot can just be so darn annoying in a 1 versus 1 fight. The only problem is, a lot like with the Huragan, is that you don't have any abilities that increase your durability. And so you really want to try and use your mobility to be able to ensure that it truly is a 1 versus 1 fight, or like earlier on in the gameplay, you are being a third-party sneaky sausage. So now I'm going to be playing in the Beowulf. This vehicle is a Swedish heavy tank, although even though Wargaming says that one of its weaknesses is that it's very slow, it's definitely not very slow for very long. All it takes is one of the yellow drops, the ammunition drops, and then to be able to get into one of the green drops as well, and suddenly this vehicle's top speed goes from an okay like 30 or 40 up until an outrageous amount. And you're going to see that I just really don't know what Wargaming were thinking when they were creating this one. It's kind of this all-purpose crunching heavy. Do I want to be able to go at 58 in a heavy tank right from the get-go? Well, okay. And I got enough power to weight ratio to seemingly be doing that mostly as I'm even going up slope at 55 here. And now the Beowulf is just this all-purpose tank. It's got some gun depression, which is lovely. It's got the mobility to be able to control the engagement against its opponents. And it's got some fearsome abilities, which we're going to try and put to use in this battle here. Alright, so unfortunately the Varyag looks like it managed to give me the slip, which is a shame, because as a heavy tank, you are at your most powerful at level 2. As soon as you manage to get the mobility, and if you get lucky and you manage to get yourself one of your 5 key abilities as well, yeah, this thing is nasty. So the Beowulf gets the Ring of Fire, which envelops the enemy vehicle in a fiery aura and causes damage to them and reduces their mobility. It's kind of like one of the traps from the Raven, But it's a little bit different because while the trap in the Raven reduces the enemy tank's combat capacity, I think by reducing their crew skills by what feels like about 20 or 20 to 50%, this one just slows down their mobility and does damage to them. But when you're playing in a heavy tank, if you can try and get into close quarters combat and bully your opponents, yeah, the Ring of Fire can actually add up to a substantial amount of damage. So I'm not really managing to find anyone here, which is such a shame because I did manage to get those repairs quickly. And finally we found ourselves a Raven. So we're going to go straight after them. And I think this Raven is going to find out that there's hardly any difference in mobility between the Beowulf and any of the medium tanks. Only the light tanks are really faster than this. And I honestly think this tank goes a little bit too quickly. As we manage to just chunk in here, we drop our Ring of Fire, which is doing 84 damage. It's not as much as, obviously, the discharge, but look how big it is, and it basically forces your opponents to try and drive away awkwardly from you. And we managed to do 1,100 damage pretty darn quickly. So the Ring of Fire is kind of this, get out of the fire or just continue to burn. And while I don't think it's very sensible, the fire is significant. But I don't think it's so significant that you would ever want to, for example, drive in front of an autoloader if you think you can just hold the position in a heavy. It's substantial damage, don't get me wrong, and you want to try and get out of it, but it's not so much damage that it will overpower you later on in the battle. However, the issue is, early on, that 28, 28, 28, 28, 28 tick definitely does add up when you've only got like 1,000 hit points early on. And the fact that it's got an incredibly low cooldown makes the Beowulf just seeming like an absolute powerhouse. So unfortunately we bounce off the side there off the Varyag. We're going to try and get forwards here, and we can see that, oh dear, that Varyag just managed to upgrade to 2,500 hit points, but we got 2,000 as well. Well, let the duel commence. We're both of pretty much equal footing, and you see that I decide to put the fire here, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and get behind the enemy tank here and keep them in my Ring of Fire, which is kind of pretty filthy. And we can see they're still burning for 63. So I'm not sure if that means that the fire is percentage based, or alternatively, if the fire is actually based on your level. But that was actually outrageous amounts of damage to the Varyag. You know what I said about the fire? Oh my word. I believed that right up until I saw what it did against that Varyag. And we absolutely torched 2,400 hit points off that tank in quick succession. And this is hopefully showing you why the Beowulf is just such an unbelievable monster on the battlefield. It's so fast, yet it's so good in close quarters combat, yet it also gets some pretty darn good guns. And if you stack the hit points on this thing, you can get to 2,700 hit points, which can give you the durability to be able to win those fights. So this Raven comes around the corner and spots me, but I know that his friend won't have been able to spot him, but that's a bit of a disaster as I failed to penetrate the Raven with the heat shell, so now I'm going to go for my gold rounds here, which will have higher penetration. And we can see that we're doing 38 damage to the Raven here, and he's just panicking with all the fire around him because naturally people don't want to let the Beowulf get behind them. And unfortunately for this Raven, it doesn't look like he has a trap. He's bouncing gold rounds off the front of our vehicle as the armor on this thing is pretty troll. And even though they've got the 5-key ability there to upgrade their gun handling and their reload, I believe, they get shut down. And I've still got, I didn't even have to use my 6-key or even heal there. I only lost about 900 hit points to that player. Talking about the 6-key, let's talk about it. The 6-key is called Adaptive Armor, and it restores hit points depending on the amount of damage that you receive. And so what you want to do is you want to use the Adaptive Armor while the enemy is bursting you with their high output damage, and then you can be able to then recover a good chunk of the hit points that you lost, which is, it makes the Beowulf incredibly durable. Think of it a bit like the German Heavy inside this game mode, that the Beowulf is similar to that. So this Varyag, I use my fire against him and looks like he's not an idiot, but I actually decide to use intuition here to try and get the extra damage from my heat. However, I think that was a bit of a misplay. I don't think the extra time for the reload was worth it, and I think I should have just gone with the APCR round there and then switched to a heat round after I fired it. So even though there is intuition, I just don't really see that it's that good compared. And you'll see that now I'm going to convert the damage, plus 291, because I was worried about losing this fight. And so I get healed for 291 at the end of it. So you're converting damage into healing, which is really cool for the Beowulf. And we managed to shut down another Varyag who looks like they were pretty much fully upgraded. yeah, this thing is just a beast. I'd say this is probably the best all-rounder of the new vehicles, and I'd say it's probably the best all-rounder for everyone to play in a Steelhunter, whether you're an average player, a below-average player, or whether you're even an above-average player. And I think above-average players will probably still do better, maybe in something like that has, should we say, a higher skill cap or a higher skill ceiling. Maybe like the Bailang that I was playing, or the Huragan, once you manage to get like the autoloader and everything on it. But if you don't have pixel perfect plays, then yeah, this fire is just awesome. And this is what happens when you play against your opponents. They drive towards you, you drop down a fire ring, now they got a choice. Either they sit in the fire and they take a large amount of damage, or they drive out the fire, and then you can basically get up behind them, and then you can be able to bully them. And then they will struggle to go through your frontal armor, and you won't struggle to go through theirs. And look at the Ring of Fire cooldown. It's 20 seconds. So let's say this player was to get a really good heal off, or to be able to come after me. Well, then I would be able to have another heal against them. And that was quite a fun moment, actually, looking that we could shoot through the balcony there. They didn't have many houses with gaps in World of Tanks. And even though, again, that Varyag was pretty much fully upgraded there was just not much that they could be able to do against us. The Beowulf is an absolute powerhouse. I lost so many games playing against Beowulfs early on when I was playing the other tanks. Once they've got the mobility upgrade at level 2, they're faster than you until you get to level 3 or later on, and it can be quite tricky. But oh, here we go, ladies and gents. It's Beowulf versus Beowulf. But look, there's actually a Bailang sitting on the corner who just put an acid shell into us. And I used my heal to see if I could remove the acid shell with a heal, and we can clearly see that we cannot remove the acid shell with a heal, so don't do that. I guess what I could have done, however, I could have used my 6 key to be able to absorb some of the damage and to heal afterwards, but that was clearly a terrible idea by me to use my heal there. Luckily, it looks like the enemy Beowulf was distracted by a raven, and now is going to turn their attention to me. And I managed to get an airdrop in position, so I get all of my cooldowns back to be able to fight this Beowulf, because I'm going to need them. But that Bailang has already shown their teeth with that cheeky acid shot that they're going to have to watch out for. And this was what was so confusing for me. Do you see how the Beowulf was up towards the north? Now he's down towards the south. They're just so fast. They're not like regular heavies inside this game mode, which are lumbering around. They're pretty quick for something that has this good armor and also this good of a gun as well. And I just can't manage to catch up with him, because obviously he's taken the correct upgrade path as well. He's fast, and he's bombing it around, picking up all the ammo, trying to get into position, and I'm just trying to get after him. Alright, so in these kind of situations where you're 1 versus 2, you probably should not do what I've done. I'm going to make some horrible mistakes here, but let's see what we can do. So he's come in, he's used his Ring of Fire, I've used my Ring of Fire against him, and now I use my 6 key, and look at that, 750 heal, 1100 heal, 1300 heal, boom! I got nearly a full heal there from my 6 key. And now, because he's using the autoloader and I'm not, I'm actually going to heal up my tank with my 4 key, and I'm at full hit points and he's not. But unfortunately, we're not going to be able to quite be able to take them down before they manage to get their recovery going. And they get their autoloader. So now I'm seeming to be able to win against this Beowulf. He panics and uses his heal, but I've still got the reload here, and I'm completely winning this engagement. I'm feeling really clean about it. And we can see that the enemy Beowulf uses their fire, I use my fire, and unfortunately, my 6 key doesn't seem to be back off cooldown yet. And even though I would have been able to win my duel against the Beowulf, the sneaky Bailang in the corner, the Chinese light tank, assassinates me with an acid shell there and then finishes off the other Beowulf. So well played to the Bailang at the end of the game. That was a great kill on me, and that's exactly what you should do. You should try and third party if you're the sneaky Chinese light tank in that situation. And while I was going to win my duel against the enemy Beowulf, as I do feel I was outplaying them in the 1 versus 1 engagement with the use of my abilities, I end up finishing 3rd in this game with 15,000 damage dealt and 5 kills because I got outplayed by the Bailang. Now, I inspected the Bailang afterwards. They had a 43% win ratio overall on their account. And the only damage that they dealt in this entire game was to me. No, I'm not suggesting that they picked on me. They played very well. What I'm trying to suggest is that you don't have to play Steelhunter how I showed you in these last 3 replays. You don't have to be incredibly aggressive. You don't have to try and destroy everything, managing to crush one by one by one by one. That Bailang had managed to get fully upgraded, or near so, just by being a little bit more opportunistic. Going around the battlefield, collecting all of the drops, avoiding the combat, using the speed, and then they were alive at the end of the game to be able to make the only damage and kills that they did throughout the entire battle, but it's the one that counted. And I finished 3rd, and the Bailang, with the 43% win rate overall on their account, finishes 1st, and it was well deserved as well. And so the Beowulf, all in all, I think this is probably one of the better ones. Although I haven't really played quite enough Steelhunter yet to have a full conclusive opinion. I think this one's an absolute monster. And with its durability focused 6 key, or its special ability that completely negates a lot of the burst damage that can be dealt inside the game, that's just such a huge counter. So many tanks rely on their burst damage to be able to counter big heavies like that, or like this. And if the Beowulf times its 6 key well, then that means that all of that burst damage is negated. You know, when that Huragan uses their 6 key and then drops the electric discharge on you, just press your 6 key, you're going to pretty much get back all of your hit points anyway. This thing just feels like it's a little too fast. I don't think it should be quite so quick on the battlefield. And of all of the new tanks that I fought against, this one was definitely the hardest to be able to conquer. So now that I've shown you all 3 of the new vehicles, let me give you my opinion as the state of Steelhunter in 2022 and whether it's actually worth playing or not. Well, Wargaming have made a real bizarre decision, and that is that the only 3 vehicles that you will always have access to are the Harlequin, the Varjag, and the Raven. To be able to get the Valkyr, the Harbinger, the Bailang, the Beowulf, the new Huragan, you actually get 1 day of test driving, and then after that you have to spend up to 1,200 of this new currency called Steel Seals to be able to rent them for a week. Obviously Wargaming are doing this just to be able to try and encourage people to have to grind the mode to be able to play the mode in vehicles that maybe they would actually enjoy playing. Which is absolutely ludicrous, because why would you put the new content behind a play wall in the game mode that they're playing? It strongly suggests to me that Wargaming think that these 3 new vehicles might be the best ones of the bunch, and to be able to continue playing the best ones of the bunch, then you have to keep farming to be able to play them. I personally think this is an absolutely horrendous decision, and at the very least they should get rid of this whole useless new play-to-play currency. And it's always bizarre to me to see that Wargaming create relatively fun game modes and then they just try their very hardest to remove all of the fun from them by putting them behind play walls. Passing mention should be made to the fact that there is now a permanent bonus to credits based on whether you have a premium account when playing Steelhunter. Now, I strongly disagree with this because all of the fun game modes were meant for everyone, not just the paying customers. And one of the best things for a free-to-play player without a premium account was they could actually go into these game modes and be able to make some decent credits, because Wargaming would have to scale the rewards based on everyone getting the same, rather than the premium customers getting 50% more. So undoubtedly, Steelhunter is going to become a lot less lucrative for the free-to-play players. So next it comes down to the daily missions inside Steelhunter. And if you can find the will to want to play this game mode at least once or a few times a day, depending on how well you do, sure, it can be fairly lucrative, with getting 50 bonds a day and getting up to 60,000 credits if you're able to finish in the top 5 and deal 12,000 damage over any number of battles. But these kind of micro rewards, they're just really not enough to justify it. And the only main rewards you can get from playing Steelhunter are some unique styles that I think are amongst the worst looking in the game. And honestly, the amount of battle pass points that you get from playing Steelhunter is way below that of what you could achieve with Frontline. And so don't look at this as a way to be able to top up your battle pass to accelerate towards the new Warhammer styles, because it's barely as quick as playing the random queue, and a lot of people are going to have a lot less fun playing Steelhunter than they would playing their vehicles that maybe they actually need experience on. And so all in all, Steelhunter, Wargaming, keep developing it. Wargaming, keep pushing it. And I'd like to say that all of the people who worked on it at Wargaming, you've done a great job. It looks great. I like the way that you're thinking about all of the different abilities, but it just doesn't really work for me. World of Tanks is not meant to be a battle royale game. We all fell in love with World of Tanks, at least I did, because it's a team-based arcadey game. Again, I just don't know why Wargaming keep pushing so much development into game modes that, at least for me personally, after playing a couple of battles, just feel a little bit boring and you'll be wanting to do something else. But maybe you disagree with me. Maybe you think that Steelhunter is the most fun you've had in World of Tanks, and if that's the case, let me know in the comments down below. Anyway, ladies and gents, boys and girls, that was it for today. Really hope you enjoyed this video. Maybe it was useful for you. If it was, give it a thumbs up. If you hated it, give it a thumbs down. And yeah, let me know in the comments whether you think that Steelhunter is absolutely awesome, whether you love the new vehicles, whether you love the new test drive and the Steel Seals system, or whether you think that that would end up preventing you from wanting to play it. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.